Let's get started on Chapter 6, Configuring Servers for Remote Management. This is a short chapter. In this chapter, we will look at Server Manager, managing remote servers, remote server administration tools, and managing a server from a Windows 8 workstation. Now, you already know what Server Manager is. We've used it several times in this class, and we've used it to configure a local server. So if I go to Server Manager and I click on Local Server, when we say local server, it means I am standing at the server. And I could change the name of the local server, or I could add it to a domain, or I could configure the IP address, or I could go under Tools and I could select Computer Management. And for this local server, I could go into Disk Management and create or delete or format disk volumes. Or I could go to Manage and I could select Add Roles and Features, and I could add a role such as the DHCP role, and if I did, I would be installing it on this local server. Local server means you're standing at that server. And the problems with configuring the local server is every time you want to configure a server, you have to walk up to that server to configure it. And that's not so bad if all of the servers are together in one server room. But at the Community College of Baltimore County, we have 3 main campuses. And if I need to work on a server at the Dundalk campus, and I am at the Catonsville campus, and it's 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I'm not going to feel like driving across Baltimore to configure that server at the Dundalk campus. So this introduces remote server administration. What I do is I remotely connect to those other servers at the Essex or Dundalk campuses, and I remotely manage those servers. I can remotely configure the servers. I can remotely install roles and features. So let's look at remotely managing servers. I go to Server Manager, and if I click on Local Server, anything I do here applies to the local server. But if I click on All Servers, I can only see the server where I currently am, Server 1, the local server. So to add, or I should say to connect to other servers, I right-click on server name, and I select Add Servers. I then type in the IP address or the DNS name of that server, and I want to connect to a server named server-2012. I click on Search, and it finds it in DNS. Of course, DNS has to be working for us to do this. And I click on OK. And then to connect to another server, I right-click, and I select Add Server, and I type in the IP address or DNS name. The DNS name is FileServer1, and it is listed in DNS. I add it, I click it on OK. So now I can manage the local server or one of the remote servers. To manage or configure FileServer1, I right-click on FileServer1 and select Computer Management. And now you can see I'm at the Computer Management console for FileServer1. And on FileServer1, I could remotely create or delete users or groups. I could go to Performance Monitor to see how hard this server is working. I could go to Disk Management to create or delete volumes. Or I could go to another remote server, Server 2012, and I could right-click on that server and select Computer Management. And now I'm at the Computer Management console for Server 2012, which is a remote server. And I could create and delete users and groups. I could see how hard the server is working, or I could perform disk management. If I wanted to add a role to one of the servers, such as the DHCP role, if I wanted to add that role to Server 2012, I would click on Manage, and then I would select Add Roles or Features, and I would select Role-Based or Feature-Based Installation, configure a single server. Click on Next, select the server that I want to connect to, Server 2012. Click on Next, select the role that I want to install. In this case, I will install the DHCP service, followed by Next. I will not install a feature. Click on Next. It tells me it will install DHCP. I click on Next, and it says it will restart the destination computer automatically if required. So I click on Install, and then it installs DHCP on the remote server. So we can see that I could configure my local server, or I could connect to remote servers. I can remotely monitor servers, I can remotely configure servers, I can remotely install roles and features. The remote server administration tools is a feature that's required for remote server management. It's already installed by default, but let me show it to you. I go to Server Manager and I right click on Manage and I select Add Roles and Features, and under Features you can see Remote Server Administration Tools is already installed, but I just wanted to verify that it was installed because it's required for remote management. Remote Server Administration Tools is used for remote management, and it's already installed on Server 2012. Now, let's look at Remote Server Administration Tools on Windows 8. That is to say, we will be managing our servers from a Windows 8 workstation. This is a new model, or a new paradigm for managing servers, whereas the old method of managing servers was to walk up to the server to configure the server using the graphical user interface on that server. The new method is that the servers run server core. There is no graphical user interface, so they run faster, and we manage the server from the workstation. The graphical user interface tools are on the workstation. We stay at the workstation and remotely connect to the servers and remotely configure those servers. So let's look at a Windows 8 workstation, and to bring up the remote server administration tools, I click on the Windows button on the keyboard, and then you can see Server Manager is already installed by default. If I click on Server Manager and I select all servers, you can see that from this Windows 8 workstation I can remotely connect to these servers and manage them using the graphical user interface. I stand at the Windows 8 workstation and remotely configure the servers. This is a new model for managing servers. Instead of walking up to the servers to configure the servers run server core. They have no graphical user interface, and the management of the servers is done from a workstation. Chapter 6 Summary. In this chapter, we looked at Server Manager, and we looked at managing remote servers. We saw that Remote Server Administration Tools is a feature on Windows 2012 server, and we saw that we could manage a server from a Windows 8 workstation. And this concludes Chapter 6. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.